The quantum communicator's urgent chime echoed through Commander Atlas Kane's quarters, aboard the diplomatic vessel Meridian's Edge, pulling him from his study of trade regulations and territorial disputes. The holographic display materialized before him, crackling with the distinctive interference pattern that marked interstellar transmission across the void between human and alien space. Atlas straightened his uniform jacket, a habit born from years of representing humanity in the most delicate situations. At 34, he had already negotiated 3 major peace accords and prevented 2 potential wars through careful diplomacy. His sharp green eyes and weathered features spoke of someone who had seen the worst of interspecies relations and somehow found ways to make them work. The seal that appeared on the transmission made him pause. The crystalline symbol of the Thyralian sovereignty pulsed with internal light, a communication method so advanced that human scientists still couldn't fully understand it. But it was the personal cipher beneath it that made Atlas's breath catch. This message bore the direct seal of Empress Vayana herself. Commander Kane, the translated voice was melodious yet alien, carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in his chest. You have been selected for a diplomatic mission of unprecedented importance. The sovereignty requests your immediate presence at the crystal throne on Thyros Prime. Come alone, armed only with your wisdom and your humanity. The message dissolved, leaving Atlas staring at empty air. In 20 years of diplomatic service, he had never received such a personal invitation from any alien leadership, let alone the mysterious Thyralians. Their empire controlled a dozen star systems, their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's, and yet they had remained almost completely isolated from galactic affairs. Atlas called up everything the human diplomatic corps knew about the Thyralians, which wasn't much. They were a matriarchal society, ruled by women of exceptional longevity and intelligence. Their cities were said to be grown from living crystal, their technology based on principles that bent the laws of physics. Most intriguingly, no human had ever been granted an audience with their empress. Sir? Lieutenant Hayes, his aide, appeared in the doorway. The bridge is requesting new coordinates. Where are we heading? Thyros Prime, Atlas replied, still processing the implications. Plot a course for the Thyralian home system. Hayes's eyes widened. Sir, that's sovereign space. We don't have diplomatic clearance for... We do now. Atlas handed him the authorization codes that had accompanied the message. And apparently, I'm going in alone. As the Meridian's Edge altered course toward the unknown, Atlas spent his remaining travel time studying what little was known about Thyralian culture. They valued intellectual achievement above physical prowess, respected emotional control, and their society had been stable for over a millennium. What could they possibly want with one human diplomat? The answer began to crystallize as Atlas reviewed his own service record. Every successful negotiation he'd conducted had involved not just political maneuvering, but genuine emotional connection with alien representatives. Where others saw obstacles, he found common ground. Where others saw differences, he discovered shared hopes and fears. 3 days later, the Meridian's Edge dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Thyros system. The view that greeted them defied description. Planets that glowed with their own inner light, space stations that looked more like artwork than architecture, and at the center of it all, Thyros Prime, a world that sparkled like a jewel against the stars. Incoming transmission, Hayes reported, his voice tight with nervousness. A new voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect standard. Commander Kane, you are cleared for immediate transport to the Crystal Palace. Your vessel will remain in orbit, under our protection. Atlas felt his pulse quicken as a column of light engulfed him. This was it. Whatever the Thyralians wanted, whatever test or negotiation awaited him, there was no turning back now. As the transport beam pulled him toward the surface of an alien world, Atlas Kane steeled himself for what might be the most important diplomatic mission of his career. He had no idea it would become the most important moment of his life. The transport beam deposited Atlas onto a platform of what appeared to be living crystal, its surface warm beneath his feet and pulsing with soft bioluminescence. He stood in a vast courtyard surrounded by spires that twisted impossibly upward, their faceted surfaces catching and refracting light in ways that seemed to defy physics. The air itself shimmered with energy, and Atlas could feel a subtle vibration through his bones, as if the entire city was alive and breathing. "Welcome to Thyros Prime, Commander Kane." The voice belonged to a tall figure approaching from the palace entrance. She moved with fluid grace, her form humanoid but distinctly alien. Her skin held a subtle iridescent quality, shifting between pale gold and silver as she walked. Her hair, if it could be called that, flowed like liquid mercury down her shoulders. Most striking were her eyes, deep violet with flecks of starlight that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. "I am Counselor Zephyra, advisor to Her Imperial Majesty. The Empress awaits your presence in the Throne of Harmonies." Atlas inclined his head respectfully. "The honor is mine, Counselor. Though I must admit, I'm uncertain about the nature of this meeting." Zephyra's expression remained neutral, but Atlas caught a flicker of something, amusement, curiosity, in those ancient eyes. "All will be made clear, Commander. Follow me." They walked through corridors that defied architectural logic, walls that curved and flowed like frozen water. Atlas noticed other Thyralians moving through the palace, all elegant, all bearing that same timeless quality. But something felt different about their movements, their interactions. There was a precision to everything, a careful control that spoke of emotions held in perfect check. The throne room opened before them like the inside of a massive geode. Crystalline formations jutted from every surface, creating a natural amphitheater that hummed with harmonic resonance. Dozens of Thyralian nobles and advisors lined the chamber, their forms creating a rainbow of iridescent colors against the crystal backdrop. And at the center, on a throne that seemed grown rather than built, sat Empress Vayana. Atlas had seen her image in intelligence briefings, but no hologram could have prepared him for her presence. She was tall, even seated, her form perfectly proportioned in ways that suggested both strength and grace. Her skin held a deeper iridescence than the others, shifting through spectrums that included colors Atlas had no names for. Her hair cascaded, like aurora borealis, and when she turned her gaze upon him, he felt as though she could see straight through to his soul. "Commander Atlas Kane." Her voice resonated through the chamber, each word carrying harmonics that seemed to vibrate in his chest. "Approach." Atlas walked forward, acutely aware of the dozens of alien eyes upon him. He stopped at what he judged to be a respectful distance and offered a formal bow. "Your Imperial Majesty, I am honored by your invitation, though I confess, I'm uncertain what service I might provide to the sovereignty." Vayana rose from her throne with liquid grace, stepping down to his level. She was taller than him by several inches, and as she moved closer, Atlas caught a scent like ozone after lightning. Sharp, clean, electric. "You come expecting to negotiate trade routes, perhaps, border agreements, resource allocations." Her voice held a note of amusement as she began to circle him slowly, studying him like a fascinating specimen. "Tell me, Commander, what do you know of Thyralian history?" Atlas felt the weight of formal protocol, but something in her tone suggested this was no ordinary diplomatic dance. "Your sovereignty has maintained peace for over a millennium. Your technology and arts are renowned across the galaxy. Your people have achieved what many species consider the height of civilization." "Indeed." She paused directly in front of him, those starlight eyes boring into his. "We have eliminated war, poverty, disease, even death from old age. We have mastered the forces of nature and bent them to our will. By every measure, we are perfect." The way she said perfect carried a weight Atlas couldn't quite decipher. "That's an extraordinary achievement, Your Majesty." "Is it?" Vayana's head tilted slightly. "Tell me, Commander Kane, when did your species last create something truly revolutionary? When did you last make a leap forward that changed everything?" Atlas considered the question. The quantum fold drive was developed 15 years ago. Before that, the neural interface protocols, born from desperation during the Centauri crisis, if I recall. And before that, The atmospheric processors developed during the Great Famine. Vayana's lips curved in what might have been a smile. Always in response to crisis. Always driven by need, by passion, by the very chaos we have eliminated. The realization began to dawn on Atlas. You're saying that perfection has cost you something. Progress requires chaos, Commander. Innovation demands risk. Growth needs the very emotions we have learned to control. Vayana gestured to her court, and Atlas noticed what he had missed before. The perfect stillness of their expressions, the careful control of every movement. We have created paradise, and in doing so we have stagnated. The throne room fell utterly silent. Atlas could feel the weight of history pressing down on this moment, the sense that he stood at the fulcrum of something far greater than trade, negotiations. And that, Vayana said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, is why you are here. She raised her hand, and the gesture carried absolute authority. Court is dismissed. All of you. Leave us. The chamber emptied with silent efficiency, leaving Atlas alone with the most powerful woman in the Thoralian Empire. In the sudden intimacy of the vast space, Vayana's carefully controlled mask slipped just slightly, revealing something vulnerable beneath. Now, Commander Kane, she said, stepping closer until he could see the complex patterns of light that moved beneath her skin. Let us speak of what it truly means to be human. The silence stretched between them, filled with the subtle harmonics of the crystal chamber. Atlas found himself studying Vayana with new eyes, seeing not just an empress but a being grappling with questions that went to the heart of existence itself. Your Majesty, he began carefully, you speak of humanity as if we possess something your people lack. But from where I stand, the Thoralian sovereignty represents everything we aspire to become. Vayana moved to one of the crystal formations, placing her palm against its surface. Immediately, the entire chamber shifted, walls becoming transparent to reveal the city beyond, a breathtaking vista of impossible architecture and perfect harmony. Do you see beauty in this, Commander? It's magnificent, Atlas replied honestly, beyond anything humans have ever built, and yet it has remained unchanged for 3 centuries. Her voice carried a note of something Atlas was beginning to recognize as longing. Every building, every street, every garden exists in perfect stasis. We have eliminated the chaos that drives change, and with it, we have eliminated growth itself. She turned back to him, and Atlas saw something in her expression that transformed her from alien empress to something achingly familiar, a leader carrying the weight of her people's future. Tell me about fear, Commander Kane. The question caught him off guard. Fear? When you wake in the darkness, when the future seems uncertain, when everything you've built might crumble, what does that feel like? Atlas considered his words carefully. This wasn't diplomatic protocol anymore. This was something far more personal. It feels like standing on the edge of a cliff in a storm. Your heart pounds, your hands shake, and every instinct screams at you to run. And yet humans don't run, do they? You step forward into that storm. Sometimes, Atlas admitted, when something matters enough. Vayana nodded slowly. We eliminated fear from our society 12 centuries ago. Genetic modification, neural, conditioning, pharmacological intervention. We removed the very capacity for that emotion from our people. That sounds peaceful. It is. It's also a cage. She moved closer, and Atlas caught that electric scent again, stronger now. Without fear there is no courage. Without risk there is no reward. Without the possibility of failure, success becomes meaningless. Atlas felt a shift in the conversation, a deepening that went beyond politics or philosophy. You're not just talking about society anymore, are you? No. The admission seemed to cost her something. I am 843 years old, Commander. I have ruled for 4 centuries, loved for 6, and in all that time, I have never felt what you would call passion. Not true passion, the kind that consumes and terrifies and elevates all at once. She was close enough now that Atlas could see the patterns of light beneath her skin shift and swirl like living galaxies. Is that what you brought me here to discuss? Passion? I brought you here because your species fascinates us. Humans live such brief lives, yet you accomplish more in decades than we do in centuries. You face extinction regularly, yet you thrive. You know pain, loss, heartbreak, and somehow these things make you stronger, not weaker. Atlas found himself drawn into those starlight eyes, seeing depths he hadn't imagined possible. You want to understand what drives us. I want to understand what it means to truly live. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. My advisors have studied human biology, psychology, sociology for generations. They can recite your species' achievements, analyze your motivations, predict your behaviors. But knowledge without experience is hollow. The implication hung between them like a challenge. Atlas felt his pulse quicken, not from diplomatic tension, but from something far more primal. What exactly are you asking of me, Your Majesty? Phaeana, she corrected softly. And I'm asking you to show me what it means to be human. Not in theory, not in abstract discussion, but in reality. To let me experience the emotions, the connections, the very chaos that makes your species so remarkably alive. Atlas felt the ground shift beneath his feet, though the crystal floor remained solid. This was no longer a diplomatic mission. It was an invitation into uncharted territory that could reshape everything between their species. That would be unprecedented. The political implications alone. Politics, Phaeana interrupted, moving closer until he could feel the eye. Warmth radiating from her skin, are precisely what I'm trying to transcend. For too long our peoples have maintained careful distance, formal protocols, sanitized exchanges. But real understanding, the kind that could truly unite our species, requires something deeper. Her hand rose toward his face, stopping just short of contact. I want to know what it feels like to touch without calculating the political ramifications, to speak without considering the diplomatic consequences, to connect with another being not as an empress to a commander, but as one soul reaching out to another. Atlas felt his carefully maintained professional composure wavering. The woman before him was offering something that went beyond treaty negotiations or trade agreements. She was offering herself, her trust, her vulnerability. If I agreed to this, he said slowly, where would it lead? What would it mean for our peoples? I don't know, Phaeana replied, and her honesty was breathtaking. And for the first time in centuries, I find that uncertainty thrilling rather than terrifying. Perhaps that's the first lesson in being human, embracing the unknown rather than controlling it. The crystal chamber hummed around them as if responding to the tension in the air. Atlas realized he stood at a crossroads that would define not just his own future, but potentially the relationship between two entire civilizations. Show me, Phaeana whispered, her eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. Show me what it means to be human. Atlas felt the weight of the moment settle around them like a physical presence. The crystal chamber seemed to pulse with anticipation, its harmonic resonance shifting to match the rapid beating of his heart. Phaeana stood before him, 8 centuries of imperial authority set aside in favor of something infinitely more vulnerable, curiosity tinged with hope. Teaching humanity, he said softly, isn't something that can be explained in words alone. Then don't use words. Her voice carried a tremor he hadn't heard before, the first crack in her perfect composure. Show me. Atlas lifted his hand slowly, giving her every opportunity to step back. When she remained still, he gently touched her cheek. Her skin was warm, softer than silk, and at the contact, the patterns of light beneath her surface flared, brighter. This is wonder, he said, his thumb tracing the elegant line of her cheekbone. The moment when something ordinary becomes extraordinary simply because it matters to you. Phaeana's eyes widened, her breathing becoming less controlled. I can feel something, like electricity, but warmer. That's connection. The recognition that you're not alone in the universe. Atlas let his hand slide down to rest over her heart, feeling the rapid rhythm there. Your people eliminated physical touch from casual interaction, didn't they? Deemed it inefficient, potentially destabilizing. Her voice was breathless now, wonder replacing imperial authority. But this doesn't feel destabilizing. It feels grounding, Atlas suggested. Like finding your place in the chaos? She nodded, then hesitantly raised her own hand to mirror his gesture, palm flat against his chest. The contact sent warmth spreading through him, and he saw her eyes widen as she felt his pulse accelerate. Your heart is racing, she whispered. Why? Because you're beautiful and brilliant and you're trusting me with something precious. The admission came easier than he'd expected. That's vulnerability, Vaiana. The courage to show someone who you really are beneath all the armor. The chamber around them shifted, crystals responding to their emotional states by casting warmer, more intimate light. Vaiana noticed the change and laughed, a sound of pure delight that transformed her completely. Even the palace responds differently, she marveled. In all my centuries here, I've never seen the crystals sing like this. Maybe they were waiting for permission to feel something too. Atlas drew her closer, close enough that he could see the complex emotions playing across her features. Wonder, desire, fear, hope all mingling together in ways that made her seem intensely alive. This uncertainty, she breathed. This not knowing what happens next. How do you bear it? You learn to love it, Atlas replied, because the unknown is where all the best discoveries happen. He leaned down until their foreheads touched, giving her time to adjust to each new level of intimacy. Tell me about loneliness, Vaiana. In all your centuries, have you ever felt truly alone? Her composure cracked completely. Every day, surrounded by millions of subjects, hundreds of advisors, dozens of companions, and I've been alone for so long I'd forgotten what the alternative felt like. And now I feel like I'm finally awake. Her arms came up to encircle his neck, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. Is this what humans call falling in love? This sense of discovering something you didn't know you were missing? Atlas felt his breath catch. Sometimes, when you're lucky enough to find someone who sees you completely and still chooses to stay. See you, Atlas Kane, she whispered, his name on her lips like a prayer. I see your strength and your fear, your duty and your desire. I see the man who carries the hopes of his entire species and somehow still has room in his heart for mine. Their lips met in a kiss that bridged millennia of evolution, two species finding common ground in the most fundamental expression of connection. Vaiana's response was eager but careful, learning the language of human intimacy with the same focus she'd once applied to governing star systems. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, and the crystalline chamber around them glowed with warm, golden light. The palace hasn't sung like this since its creation, Vaiana said wonderingly. You're changing everything just by being here. We're changing everything, Atlas corrected. This isn't just about showing you humanity, it's about creating something new between us. She led him to an alcove where crystal formations created a natural sanctuary, walls that curved around them like protective arms. Here, away from the formal throne room, she seemed smaller, more approachable, not an empress, but a woman discovering desire for the first time. I want to know everything, she said, her hands exploring the texture of his uniform, fascinated by the simple humanity of buttons and fabric. Your people create art from pain, music from struggle, poetry from heartbreak. Show me how beauty comes from imperfection. Atlas caught her hands, stilling their exploration. Are you certain? Once you've felt these emotions fully, you can't unknow them. They'll change you, possibly forever. Good, Vaiana replied with fierce determination. I've been perfect for too long. I want to be human tonight. In the warm glow of the singing crystals, Atlas began to teach her the most profound lessons humanity had to offer. That true strength came from vulnerability, that the deepest connections were forged in moments of complete honesty, and that love was not the absence of fear, but the decision to trust, despite it. The universe shifted around them, two souls from different worlds finding that the space between them was not a void to be bridged, but a place where something entirely new could be born. Dawn on Thyros Prime painted the crystal city in shades of amber and rose, the living architecture responding to the planet's rotation with subtle shifts in luminescence. Atlas woke in chambers he'd never imagined existed, Vayana's private sanctuary, a space carved from a single massive geode that seemed to breathe with its own inner light. Vayana lay beside him, her aurora hair spread across pillows that seemed to be woven from captured starlight. In sleep, the careful control she'd maintained for centuries was completely absent, her face peaceful in a way that spoke of profound contentment. The patterns beneath her skin moved slowly, like a gentle tide, and Atlas realized he was seeing her as no one else ever had, completely unguarded. She stirred as the chamber's light shifted with the rising sun, her eyes opening to meet his with an expression of wonder that made his chest tighten. "You're still here," she whispered, as if afraid he might have been a dream. "Where else would I be?" Atlas brushed a strand of liquid mercury hair from her face, marveling at how the simple gesture felt both familiar and extraordinary. "I wasn't." "Certain." She turned onto her side to face him fully, her expression growing serious. "Last night changed me, Atlas. I can feel emotions I didn't know existed, thoughts and desires that my people eliminated from our genetics centuries ago. Is this how humans always feel? This intensity? This constant awareness of your own heartbeat?" "Not always," Atlas admitted, "but the capacity for it is always there, waiting." Vayana sat up, the aurora patterns in her skin shifting to deeper, more vibrant hues. "Then we have much work to do." Before Atlas could ask what she meant, soft chimes filled the chamber, a communication request that carried the harmonic signature of the Thyralian High Council. Vayana's expression shifted, the Empress reasserting herself alongside the woman he'd come to know. "Your Majesty," came Counselor Zephyra's voice, respectful but urgent. "The Council requests your immediate presence. There are concerns about the human representative's extended stay. Tell the Council we will join them shortly," Vayana replied, her tone carrying absolute authority. "And Zephyra? Prepare the full assembly. What we discuss today will reshape the future of the sovereignty." After the communication ended, Vayana turned to Atlas, her expression mixing determination with uncertainty. "Are you prepared to help me change the course of two civilizations?" "That depends on what you have in mind. Last night you showed me what humanity has that we've lost, the chaos that breeds innovation, the emotions that drive growth, the beautiful imperfection that leads to transcendence." She stood, her form regal even in the intimate setting. "I want to offer my people a choice. Remain in perfect stagnation or embrace the uncertainty that comes with truly living." An hour later, they stood before the full Thyralian High Council in the Great Assembly, a chamber that could hold thousands, its crystalline walls amplifying every word across the entire city. The assembled nobles and advisors watched with carefully controlled expressions as their Empress took her place at the central dais, Atlas beside her as an equal rather than a subordinate. "Citizens of the sovereignty," Vayana's voice resonated through crystal and thought alike, reaching every corner of their empire. "For 12 centuries, we have lived in perfect order. We have eliminated war, suffering, want, and chaos. We have achieved everything our ancestors dreamed of." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly, but Atlas noticed the perfect uniformity of their responses. Even their approval was controlled, measured. "But perfection," Vayana continued, "has cost us something precious. The ability to grow beyond what we already are. Commander Kane has shown me that true strength comes not from the absence of struggle, but from the courage to face uncertainty with hope, rather than fear." The murmurs grew louder, tinged now with something Atlas recognized as confusion. These beings had been bred and conditioned to avoid uncertainty, not embrace it. "I propose a new alliance with humanity," Vayana declared, her voice carrying the full weight of imperial authority. Not merely a trade agreement or territorial pact, but a genuine partnership. They will share their technology and resources, and we will offer ours. More importantly, they will help us remember how to feel deeply, and we will teach them the wisdom that comes with long perspective. Counselor Zafira stepped forward, her expression troubled. Your Majesty, with respect, introducing human emotional patterns into our society could destabilize everything we've built. Yes, Vayana replied simply. It could. It might also be exactly what we need to become more than we are. Atlas felt the weight of the moment, the sense that history balanced on a knife's edge. He stepped forward, addressing the assembly directly. Your Majesty speaks of partnership, but let me be clear about what humanity offers. We don't have your longevity, your technology, or your perfect cities. What we have is the willingness to fail spectacularly in pursuit of something better. We have the stubborn refusal to accept that good enough is actually good enough. He looked out over the sea of alien faces, searching for any sign that his words were reaching them. You eliminated chaos to achieve peace. We learned to dance, with chaos to achieve growth. Perhaps together we can find a balance that gives us both. The debate that followed lasted hours, a careful dance of politics and philosophy that would determine the fate of entire worlds. But in the end, it was Vayana's personal testimony that swayed them. Her description of feeling truly alive, the first time in centuries of discovering that vulnerability was not weakness but the foundation of genuine strength. The vote, when it came, was not unanimous, but it was enough. 6 months later, Atlas stood once again in the crystal chamber where everything had begun, watching as the first group of human students arrived to learn Thiralian meditation techniques, while their counterparts prepared to experience human emotional depth therapy. The changes were already visible. Thiralian art had exploded into new forms of expression, while human scientists had made breakthrough discoveries by applying Thiralian patients to long-term research. Any regrets? Vayana asked, moving to stand beside him at the chamber's transparent wall. Atlas considered the question seriously. The integration hadn't been smooth. There had been cultural clashes, misunderstandings, and moments when the entire project had seemed doomed to failure. But there had also been miracles. Thiralian composers creating symphonies that made humans weep with joy. Human philosophers helping ancient aliens rediscover wonder. Love stories that transcended species barriers. Only one, he replied, turning to face the woman who had become his partner in the truest sense. I regret that it took us so long to find each other. Vayana smiled, the expression transforming her face in ways that still took his breath away. Then we'll simply have to make the most of the time we have left. As they kissed in the singing, crystal chamber, the city around them pulsed with new rhythms, no longer the perfect harmonies of a stagnant civilization, but the complex, beautiful music of two species learning to dance together toward an uncertain but magnificent future. The Kiao universe was vast and full of unknowns, but they would face it together. Human chaos and Thiralian wisdom, mortal passion and immortal patience, creating something neither species could have achieved alone. In the end, that was the greatest lesson of all, that true strength came not from perfection, but from the courage to be vulnerable enough to grow.